Hi, and welcome back to Mooney Eni's Cooking School. Today's lesson is on focaccia. So we really like making focaccia because we think it's the most versatile and easiest of bread to make. One of the things we really like about it is that you can cook it at a low roasting temperature after a meal, or you can even bake it in the residual heat of your oven, maybe the following morning after you've had a pizza party. So we have here just our standard focaccia recipe, which you can find on our website. And we just made the dough this morning, so follow those guidelines. Once you get it into the sheet pan, you're gonna let it proof in the sheet pan and it'll expand and fill out this sheet pan. Once it's proofed, you can uncover it and start topping and dimpling it and getting it ready to bake. So first thing that we're gonna do is add our dimples, which I think is the most fun part and the most hands-on part of it. So we have just some cold water here, and I'm just gonna dip my hands in and then press and create these little dimples that you see in all the focaccia that you eat. Those dimples are really important because they hold all those toppings that you put onto your focaccia. And it's also just fun to do. So if this dough hadn't been proofed enough, what would happen is you would start adding your dimples or dimpling it, and it would just puff right back up. It wouldn't really hold the shape of your finger. That will tell you that it's underproofed and might need a little more time. All right, so once this is nice and dimpled, we have just a variety of toppings here, and this is where you can feel free to get really creative with what you have on hand. Focaccia is delicious with even just a little bit of olive oil and sea salt. It's perfect to serve as a side of a meal or even for breakfast the next day. But we have some really good toppings here that we're going to be using. So one of my favorites are these sweet caramelized onions. You're just going to start spreading it around, and you can feel free to come in after, kind of move your toppings around and spread it evenly over the top. And then we've got some Kalamata olives here. And these are going to add just a nice salty briny flavor to it. This is one of my favorite combinations on pizza as well. We do this with just the sweet caramelized onions, Kalamata olives, and then Gruyere cheese, and it's delicious. It's one of my favorites. This one right here, we have some roasted cherry tomatoes, and you can see we roasted them in quite a bit of olive oil. They've released some juices, so we actually won't be using olive oil for this one like we will for the Kalamata olives and onion. All right, so we've got these beautiful cherry tomatoes and all their olive oil and their juice. That's going to go over the top. And then for this one, we're going to do a little bit of Parmigiano. And then finally, we're going to add the olive oil to this one. Remember, this one already has the olive oil from the cherry tomato, but we're just going to do some extra virgin over this. And when you're first making focaccia, I think it's really common to, a lot of people maybe under oil it because they think that this might look like too much. That olive oil actually soaks into the bread and soaks into all those dimples that we create, and it's really important. It adds a lot of flavor, and that's why it's important to use a really good quality one too. So when you're pouring over, make sure you're adding enough. You should see some of the dimples fully filled with oil. finally, we are going to do some oregano on both. And this is just Calabrian oregano that's still on the stem. It's dried on the stem. We sell this in our store. You can find it online on our website. And it's really delicious. It's very potent compared to a lot of the jarred stuff that you find in the store. I really like having it on hand, and it's also just a really pretty garnish for the table too. So we'll just take some and crush it right over the top. And you can see how beautiful these are. We also have a sage and olive oil and sea salt one that we're going to be cooking. And that one's a really good, simple, lightly topped focaccia that pairs with a lot. Okay, so now these are ready to go into the oven. So we have this oven at around 500 degrees. You'll notice when I open this up, we do have a little live coal bed in there. Again, that's one of the really nice things about making focaccia is that you can use it in residual heat with no coal bed or with a little bit of coal bed in there. It bakes beautifully either way. So you can modify it, and it's a very, very forgiving dough to bake with. So we'll open this door. If that handle's hot, just be careful. And then we'll just slide that right into the oven. One thing I will say, if you do have a coal bed in there, just make sure that you're going to rotate this halfway through cooking. I would say, you know, today at about 500 degrees, it might take about 25 minutes. Halfway through, we're just going to rotate it so that the side closest to the coal bed, or the side that's not closest to the coal bed, gets even exposure to the coal bed. And then we'll close this back up again. So welcome back. We're at our halfway point, and I'm just going to start rotating these and then let them finish baking. So we just wanted to show you how we check them. So I'm just going to grab my hook, pull it forward. It smells so good in here. And just rotate them around. So I'm starting to see that olive oil is nice and bubbly. We've got some color developing on these. And now the door goes back on. Okay, so the focaccia is done. This kitchen smells insanely good. We've already pulled the sage and sea salt one out. I love that olive oil looking nice and bubbly. Look at that. So pretty. So I think we're going to cut into the sage one first. And since these are still hot, we're just going to take 2 spatulas and pull it right onto the board. Now these are great at any temperature. Hot out of the oven, room temperature, left over the next day. They're very, very good. So you want to use a serrated knife to cut it. You don't want to push out any of that air structure with a chef's knife. And you could just see how beautiful and pillowy this is. We've got some olive oil soaking through. Again, it smells so good in here. So cut it, enjoy it, and make it for your friends and family.